Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight for the third and final event of our 2021 Speaker Series. I'm Leo Almeida, and I'm the Ohio Government Relations Director for the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network, also known as ACS CAN. For 20 years, ACS CAN has made cancer a top priority for policymakers at every level of government and had measurable impact in reducing cancer's toll on individuals and families nationwide. From gaining dramatic increases in federal funding for cancer research and tobacco prevention and cessation programs to ensuring all Americans have access to cancer care, our work is saving lives and leading to new innovative breakthroughs in Ohio to fight and how to fight this disease. ACS CAN empowers volunteers across the country to make their voices heard to influence evidence-based public policy change that saves lives. We believe everyone should have a fair and just opportunity to prevent, find, treat, and survive cancer. As we mark our 20th anniversary, we're more determined than ever to stand together with our volunteers and save more lives from cancer. We're excited to have you join us tonight for this event because we have some amazing people who will be speaking to you and sharing some patient stories and perspectives about cancer research. Before I introduce our first speaker, I want to give a big thank you to Guardant Health for sponsoring this event. We appreciate their partnership and support. Our strongest advocates in the fight against cancer are the people who share their personal stories. We're very fortunate to have Amanda Walker with us tonight. Amanda lives in Canal, Winchester, Ohio, and used the devastating loss of her dad to liver cancer in 2019 as the driving force behind her fight to help end cancer for good. Her first day as an advocating volunteer with ACS CAN was the Ohio Cancer Action Day on April 10, 2019. In addition to ACS CAN, she has a 21-year career in banking. She loves family time, animals, the violin, and photography. It's a plus when family time includes ACS CAN, as her husband Kyle is also an advocate. Amanda, I'll turn things over to you.
Thank you, Leo, and hello, everyone. So in June of 2018, I found out how suddenly cancer can strike and carry away a cherished life. This life was my dad's. He died from primary liver cancer in less than 2 months from his diagnosis. Looking back, his cancer symptoms came out of nowhere. The first one was unbearable stomach pain that had him leave work early. And that vividly stands out because of his incredible work ethic and years of perfect attendance. Prior to this, I could count on one hand how many times my whole life I've ever seen my dad sick. And even then, he was back to normal in no time. So I figured this would be no different. And he was better at times, but something was not 100%. So in September of 2018, there was a doctor appointment made, blood work was done, no concerns were found. So he continued to work, although there were retirement plans for April of 2019. Soon, though, his good days were few and far in between. His sick days definitely outnumbered them. Now his routine was dominated with increased, intensely horrible symptoms, such as excruciating pain, extreme fatigue, severe itching, and hardly being able to eat or drink unless it was Pepto-Bismol. And the drastic weight loss made it impossible to ignore. He was seriously sick. He went back to the doctor early November. This time, the blood work discovered major red flags for his liver. Additional blood work followed, more testing, and confirmed our worst fear. My dad had primary liver cancer. November 23rd of 2018 was the diagnosis, the day after Thanksgiving. And while almost everyone was out holiday shopping, the only gift we wanted was a treatment to save my dad. That December, it started off really promising. There was a lot of consecutive days and nights that were spent at a top-notch cancer institute to try to find the best plan for him. Chemo was originally determined. He met with the head oncologist to discuss those details on December 17th. But the doctor would not approve chemo after all and said it would kill him. There were no other treatment options that were available. The tumor was found too late. Soon after, my dad died on January 18th, 2019. His liver cancer had no early detection, no reason given for the cause, and no treatment options. It felt like the worst luck on earth, as if he rolled snake eyes in life. Now, we all experience things in life that change us forever. And seeing what my dad went through and losing him to cancer did just that for me. Originally, I thought I'd be planning that much-deserved retirement party for him in April 2019. But turns out that's when I would become a volunteer for American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network, with my first day being April 10th, 2019, during our annual Cancer Action Day in Columbus. The grief from my dad's death has given me the strength and passion needed to be a cancer advocate, and it always will. Please consider volunteering to help fight cancer or share your cancer stories. Your words and actions are powerful. And thank you for listening about my dad, who battled hepatocellular carcinoma, a primary liver cancer. And with October being National Liver Cancer Awareness Month, we are reminded at how crucial early detection is with this silent killer. Timing really is everything. Another type of liver cancer is cholangiocarcinoma, or bile duct cancer. We're honored to have a guest speaker who is a cholangiocarcinoma survivor and an advocate dedicated to help end this dreadful disease while spreading hope. With that, I will turn it over to Lisa Crane to share her inspiring story.
Thank you so much. I'd like to start out with a photo of my family because this is the reason that I fight. My journey began in 2010, which seems like a long time ago, and in cancer years, it is. 2010 was the year our family's life changed forever. I was diagnosed with stage 4 intrahepatic cholangiocarcinoma, and I was given 6 months to live. My 9 by 8 centimeter tumor was found during an abdominal ultrasound to look at my gallbladder. I didn't think I needed an ultrasound since I felt fine except for some fatigue and some mild tenderness underneath my right breast. I'm thankful to our friend, Dr. Arjun Venkat, whose instincts suspected that something was wrong and insisted upon the ultrasound. He is one of the first angels in my life. The good news was that my gallbladder looked healthy. The bad news was that there was a mass taking up over 75% of my liver. Whether it was cancerous or not, it needed immediate medical attention. In hindsight, I had some bile duct cancer symptoms: pale stool, itchy skin, extreme fatigue, but I dismissed these symptoms to a change in diet just because I was a working mom and wife and I thought everybody was tired. I was told by the first oncologist I saw that I had 6 months to live and that the tumor could not be surgically removed because of its size and location. I was offered chemotherapy to extend my life, but it would not be curative. All of our research indicated that surgery was the only potential curative treatment for cholangiocarcinoma, and I had just been told that I was not a surgical candidate. Later, I would discover that only a liver surgeon should give you a surgical resection opinion. We couldn't even find a glimmer of hope at this point, and I kept thinking about something that my dad would say to our family growing up. Hope means hoping when everything seems hopeless. I kept repeating this in my head over and over and praying to God for even a tiny bit of hope to hang on to. My husband, David, who is the love of my life and my incredible advocate, researched and decided that we would go to the Cleveland Clinic for a second opinion. It was there that our hope was found. We now call the Cleveland Clinic our place of hope. We met Dr. John Fung, a world-renowned liver surgeon, and he delivered the great news that I was a surgical candidate. He is another one of my many angels. He removed over 75% of my liver in an 11.5-hour liver resection surgery and saved my life. Second opinions are critically important for all cancer patients. The surgery was followed by 6 months of chemotherapy, but unfortunately, several months later, the cancer returned with 2 new tumors in my liver. I had a second surgical resection, followed by another 6 months of chemotherapy. But the aggressive bile duct cancer I had returned again with 2 more new tumors. Several more chemotherapy combinations were tried, but they were also all unsuccessful. We were running out of options, and once again, our hope was dwindling. My case was presented to the Multidisciplinary Tumor Board at the Cleveland Clinic's Taussig Cancer Institute. It is here where a young, bright, and very kind radiation oncologist named Dr. Kevin Stevens thought outside of the box and suggested SBRT, which is stereotactic body radiation therapy. At the time, this was not an approved treatment, but Dr. Stevens believed it would work, and he believed in me. And once again, our hope was restored at the Cleveland Clinic. He debated with our health insurance and the tumor board and fought for my life. He is one of my angels. My journey has included a total of 8 tumors with 5 recurrences, and my care is led by the most wonderful oncologist, Dr. Bassam Estefan, another one of my angels. The SBRT treatment proved to be successful on all the remaining tumors. I'm thankful to my amazing Cleveland Clinic medical team. I've dubbed them my survival team. I've been no evidence of disease since 2014, thanks to their incredible medical skills, hopeful spirit, and passion for improving the lives of cholangiocarcinoma patients. I'm a lucky girl to have 6 incredible men in my life continuing to support me and carry me in hard times. Dr. John Fung, Dr. Kevin Stevens, Dr. Bassam Estefan, who've all become like family. My survival team also includes my wonderful husband, David, and our 2 amazing sons, Jacob and Noah. In 2010, our family started Crane's Cholangiocarcinoma Crew, a 501c3 organization. Our mission is to provide hope to cholangiocarcinoma patients by raising and investing in breakthrough research to prevent and cure cholangiocarcinoma, and providing support to patients as they navigate their journey through mentoring, advocacy, love, and prayer. 100% of the money we raise goes to cholangiocarcinoma research. Crane's Crew recently put together a medical advisory board of cholangiocarcinoma experts from across the country to help us with our future granting decisions. The idea for Crane's Crew was born out of the fact that there were no other organizations dedicated strictly to raising cholangiocarcinoma research money and mentoring patients and caregivers with this rare cancer. We have mentored over 450 patients and caregivers. We have supported the establishment of a liver biorepository at Cleveland Clinic and helped fund 36 PDX mouse models. I'm involved with many advocacy organizations, and I'm honored to be a research advocate for the Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation. It is absolutely the best resource for patients diagnosed with this aggressive cancer. The Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation was my first glimpse of hope when I was newly diagnosed and scouring the internet. The Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation is a global organization involved in research, patient support, and awareness. I'd also like to share a few more incredible resources and organizations that are positively impacting the cholangiocarcinoma community. Target Cancer. They fund innovative research for cholangiocarcinoma and recently opened a rare cancer precision medicine study. The Mike Shane Memorial Fund grants free remote second opinions to cholangiocarcinoma patients. The Global Liver Institute works to improve the lives of individuals and families impacted by liver disease through promoting innovation, encouraging collaboration, and scaling optimal approaches to help eradicate liver diseases. and the American Cancer Society, which I'm thrilled to be a part of now and looking forward to helping to pass legislation and advance policy change for all cancer patients. Advocacy groups working together can change and improve the lives of cancer patients. Crane's Crew considers all of these wonderful organizations our advocacy partners. As the National Organization of Rare Disease states, alone we are rare, together we are strong. In the first several years after my diagnosis, I spent time mentoring other patients, raising research money, volunteering, and advocating for others. Today, my role as an advocate and mentor has grown. I enjoy advocating for patients and also advocating for our disease. I know many people believe that there is a cure for cancer, but since pharmaceuticals are a lucrative business, we will never announce a cure because there's just too much money to be made. This simply is not true. I've had the honor of working with industry experts and scientists. Cancer is complicated, and there isn't one answer for a cure. Each of our bodies are unique, and each of our cancers contain unique mutations. As an advocate, I've had the chance to review patient literature and clinical trial materials. I remember my first meeting with a pharmaceutical company thinking, how can I possibly offer something of value sitting around a table of the brightest of brightest doctors, scientists, and medical experts? I was shocked to learn that they want the patient's voice to be heard and that they care about making a better experience for the patient. 2020 was a historical year for cholangiocarcinoma, as Incyte received FDA approval for Pemazyre, the first drug to target FGFR2 mutations in cholangiocarcinoma patients. The FDA also approved Foundation Medicine as a companion diagnostic. My advocacy work has given me the opportunity to advocate on Capitol Hill with the Global Liver Institute. We went to gain support and signatures for the Liver Act, which is a bill in Congress that would drive several public health initiatives and will help people of all ages, lifestyles, and ethnic backgrounds reduce their risk for liver cancer. This year, the state of Ohio declared February 12th as World Cholangiocarcinoma Day, and our very own Cleveland's Terminal Tower was lit green, along with buildings all over the world going green to spread awareness for liver and bile duct cancer. So when you think that one voice can't make a difference, think again. When you think I'm not scientifically minded and no one would want to hear my thoughts, think again. I have a BFA in musical theater, and yet scientists wanted to hear my perspective, the patient's perspective. In 2010, when I was diagnosed, there were no clinical trials or treatment protocols for cholangiocarcinoma patients. But today, we have over 200 trials and researchers all over the world dedicated to the science of cholangiocarcinoma. Advocacy works, and everyone has the ability to advocate. Whether it be for science or even one patient, you can make a difference. Share your story, because our stories are what give others hope. I attend conferences and advocacy training seminars to learn as much as I can so that I can share what I learn with all the patients that I talk to. I enjoy learning the science of the disease and keeping up with all the clinical trials and new therapies. And I love helping patients navigate those second opinions, trials, and different treatment protocols. Once I start mentoring a patient, they have me for life. I have a true love of people, and my parents taught me that serving others is serving God. There is no greater privilege than to help support and advocate our cancer community. I consider myself a joyful person, but talking cancer 7 days a week can be difficult. I find my strength in my faith, my family, my friends, and God. The pandemic has been a difficult time for everyone, but especially the cancer community. My heart breaks talking to patients who are attending chemotherapy alone, seeing their oncologist by themselves, and having surgeries and procedures without the comfort of family and friends. Cancer is a difficult journey with those you love by your side, but being alone makes it even harder. I miss being able to visit local patients during treatments or hospital stays, and I miss the monthly dinners and gatherings at our house for patients and family. Hopefully, we will get back to our pre-pandemic lifestyle soon, because we all need the human touch. We need hugs, hand-holding, love, and support. What advice do I have for cancer patients? If your doctor takes your hope away, find another doctor. Make sure you are evaluated by a multidisciplinary team of experts specializing in your type of cancer. Get a second opinion. Everyone is afraid that they will hurt their doctor's feelings, but trust me, you won't. Have biomarker testing done, and don't be afraid of clinical trials. If you can't have someone with you at appointments, ask to record your visit or FaceTime in your support person. And please, please don't take supplements or anything that's labeled natural without checking with your oncologist and your medical team. Remember, it's okay to have bad days. Cancer is tough stuff. As Dr. John Fung once told me, remember, you are a statistic of one and never ever give up hope. What advice do I have for everyone? Remember, life is fragile and should be cherished. You're stronger than you know. If you feel that something is wrong with your body and your health, don't stop until you find someone who will listen to you until you find an answer. So what has the last 11 years taught me? A lot. But the most important thing I have learned is what defines me lies inside of my heart and not in my career and not in my disease. My passion to help others is what drives me, and my faith and the love of my family is what carries me through the most difficult of days. I'd like to close with a few lines from one of my favorite songs by Fernando Ortega that I sing in my head daily and I sing during all my scans and MRIs. Take heart, my friend, we'll go together. This uncertain road that lies ahead, our faithful God has always gone before us, and he will lead the way once again. Take heart, my friend, we can walk together, and if our burdens become too great, we can hold up and help one another in God's love and in God's grace. Thank you for allowing me to share my journey today, and please remember that there is always hope.
Amanda and Lisa, I can't thank you enough for sharing your stories with all of us tonight. I'm sure I speak for many who are listening in tonight that both of you are courageous and very motivating. We will now have time for some questions from the audience for Amanda and Lisa. If you have a question for one of them, please type your question into the chat. And the first question we'll have is for Amanda. Amanda, you shared, what motivated you to get involved as an advocate. And I'm wondering if you can share with folks how they can get involved.
Absolutely. So fightcancer.org is an awesome website that definitely helps to show so many of the options out there for what you can do with volunteering. There's a lot of areas to volunteer, so you got to find what you're most passionate about, what you're most comfortable with, and really go after that. And yeah, so fightcancer.org is what I would recommend starting with, and basically let your heart guide you from there.
Great, thanks, Amanda.
Absolutely.
And Lisa, a question for you. Your story is obviously inspirational, and you've done a lot of hard work in the cancer fight. What advice do you have for someone recently diagnosed with cancer?
So I would advise a new patient to always make sure that they're seen by a multidisciplinary team specializing in their cancer, to reach out for a second opinion, to find an organization, an advocacy organization that supports that type of cancer, and to connect with other people that have the same cancer as you. There's something really special. It's not that misery loves company, but we all love being together and supporting each other and really understanding each other. I tell people that after all the things I've been through, even though it's been difficult, they've been a blessing, because as a mentor and someone who supports patients, I think it makes me a more relatable person. So find that person. It doesn't have to be a group session. It could be a one-on-one. It could be a phone call, but find that support that you need, and never, ever let anyone take your hope away.
Thanks, Lisa. Don't think I see any other questions popping up in the chat. So again, thank you so much for sharing your stories with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you.
We're also very fortunate to have Dr. Tiffany Unger with us tonight to help us better understand disparities in oncology. Dr. Unger is a hematology oncology fellow at the Cleveland Clinic. She also holds the role as the program's Quality and Patient Safety Fellow. Her interest in quality and patient safety was first demonstrated in residency when she won the award for Best Quality Improvement Project in the residency category for her project on strategic overbooking of patients at the Louis Stokes Veteran Affairs Outpatient Clinic. As a hospitalist in the year between her residency and fellowship, she served as a mentor for the Physician Diversity Mentoring Group at Heritage College of Osteopathic Medicine, a role which she maintains through this day. In her fellowship, she has leveraged her relationships with the medical school and Taussig Cancer Center to start a pipeline of underrepresented minorities into oncology. In her role as Quality and Patient Safety Fellow, she has helped implement a social justice curriculum by bringing lectures to the fellows, as well as helping to select material for the humanities didactics. She has led talks on topics such as disparities in oncology care, as well as disparities in clinical research. Dr. Unger plans to practice as a breast oncologist when she graduates in June 2022, and looks forward to providing excellent care to a diverse patient panel while remaining active in quality improvement, diversity, and disparities work. Dr. Unger, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you so much for that really kind introduction. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tiffany Unger, and I am a third-year oncology fellow at the Cleveland Clinic. Thank you for allowing me to share this short talk with you on understanding disparities in oncology. I have just one disclosure I'd like to share is that the opinions expressed during this talk are my own and do not reflect the opinions of my employer. However, all of the facts that I share today have references at the bottom of the slide, and I encourage everyone to explore the literature for yourself. So in this today's short talk, I will give a 30,000-foot view of disparities in oncology to help us better understand some of the issues that our cancer patients face. To achieve this goal, we will define fundamental terms around health disparities. We'll become familiar with disparities in oncology, and finally, we'll briefly identify ways to increase health equity. Of course, each of these topics could be a talk on their own, but I wanted to at least provide a sampling for you this evening. So before I continue, I would love to find out who is in the audience this evening. If you could please use the chat box to share what hat you're wearing for tonight's presentation. Are you a healthcare advocate, a patient, a healthcare worker? Are you a community member, a researcher, or perhaps you're wearing some other hat? I would love to hear who's out in the audience today. All right, I know we've got a couple of advocates in the room, and I see a researcher. Fantastic. Well, it looks like that we have a nice variety, and it's great to have you all here, and a past caregiver. Wonderful. So let's talk about how to define equity. Healthy People 2020 defines health equity as the attainment of the highest level of health for all people. Achieving health equity requires valuing everyone equally and may require efforts to address avoidable inequalities, societal injustices, and healthcare disparities. This can be contrasted with inequity, wherein the highest level of health is not achieved by all people. Some people achieve the standard while some do not. So let's explore inequity a little bit further. Inequities, also known as disparities, are avoidable inequalities in health between groups of people. Health inequities arise from societal inequalities. One way that societal inequalities can be demonstrated are in the social determinants of health. Social determinants of health are the conditions and in the environments in which people are born, live, learn, work, play, worship, and age that affect a wide range of health, functioning, and quality of life outcomes and risks. When the term health disparity was coined in the United States around 1990, it was not meant to refer to all possible health differences amongst all possible groups of people. Rather, it was intended to denote a specific kind of difference, namely, worse health outcome among socially disadvantaged people. When we consider correcting inequities or disparities, our goal is for equity, everyone getting what they need, and not necessarily equality, because different populations need different tools to achieve optimal health. It's important to note that health equity does not mean that everyone gets precisely the same care or will achieve precisely the same level of health. There's a distinction made between health difference and health disparities. Health disparities come from unfair social systems. For example, racial segregation, unsafe employment, and low quality education. Health differences, on the other hand, are related to biological causes. For example, genetics or age. Differences in healthcare may be clinically appropriate if they accommodate unique patient needs or preferences. For example, some patients may wish to forego certain medical care because of religious beliefs. One way to think about it is that a health difference plus a societal injustice can lead to a health disparity. So let's apply this concept to an example in oncology. Ashkenazi Jewish women are more likely to have a BRCA1 or BRCA2 mutation. For women with this mutation, about 50% will get breast cancer by the time they turn 70 years old, compared to only 7 out of 100 women in the general United States population. Do you think this variation in breast cancer risk represents a health difference or a health inequity? You can use the chat box to share your response. So the correct answer would be A, a health difference. In this case, the difference in breast cancer risk is due to genetics. Recall that health differences that are due to genetics are not disparities. If the difference was due to a social injustice, then this may be considered a health disparity. So now that we've defined these terms, let's take a look at examples of disparities in cancer. In particular, I'll touch on disparities as it pertains to cancer screening, treatment, clinical trial participation, and mortality. Disparities can be found in a number of different groups of people. When we talk about disparities in cancer, which groups tend to come to mind for you? And again, this is another opportunity to use the chat box. Throughout the pandemic, we saw certain groups were having disparities when it came to the COVID infections. And this is certainly something that we see in oncology as well. So when you think about disparities in oncology, what groups might come to mind? So there can be a number of different groups that can be affected by disparities. The American Association for Cancer Research has identified at least 11 groups that may experience cancer health disparities. These groups can include racial and ethnic minorities, or folks who have different socioeconomic status, people who are differently abled. It can include those who may not have health insurance. It could include people that live in certain regions or certain areas of the country, perhaps rural versus urban areas. It could include our LGBTQ population. It can include immigrants, refugees. It can include adolescents and young adults. It could also include the elderly. In the United States, it's easy to think of just racial minority groups. However, there are many other groups that also are at risk for disparities. Patients also experience intersectionality, wherein a person may identify with multiple groups, such as a Black transsexual who lives in rural Ohio. So let's explore some of the specific areas of disparities of these various groups of people. Disparities in cancer screening has been identified time and time again. For example, lesbians have lower rates of cervical cancer screening compared to heterosexual women. Transgender individuals are less likely to be screened for breast and colorectal cancer as compared to cisgendered individuals. Amish adults have lower rates of prostate, colorectal, and cervical cancer screening compared to the Ohio Appalachian non-Amish population. Latinx patients who perceive discrimination are less likely to screen for cancer altogether. American Indian and Alaska Natives are less likely to be screened for colon cancer. Unfortunately, there are also disparities in cancer treatment. Some of the most interesting studies come from lung cancer. Studies have shown that even when lung cancer is diagnosed early, Black patients are less likely than white patients to receive surgery. Racial differences in the receipt of surgery were eliminated in 2010 for early stage lung cancer in one setting, the VA facilities, and in fact, they had no differences in overall survival once they were able to control for access to healthcare. We also know that Black patients with colorectal cancer are less likely to receive the recommended surgical treatment, radiation, and chemotherapy for their disease. Disparities in clinical trial participation are well documented. Between 2003 and 2016, oncology clinical trial participation was just 6% for African Americans and 2.6% for Hispanics, despite a cancer prevalence of 10% and 7% respectively. There are many historic and current reasons for this, even beyond the Tuskegee syphilis experiments, including the case of Marion Sims, Henrietta Lacks, and the abuses of the Holocaust. There is growing evidence that the effectiveness of specific therapies and medications varies across racial and ethnic groups. The National Institutes of Health Revitalization Act of 1993 mandates that clinical trials seeking federal grant funding must ensure enrollment rates of women and minorities that are large enough to undergo proper analysis. Finally, there are disparities in cancer mortality. Black men have a 111% higher risk of dying from prostate cancer compared to white men. Asian and Pacific Islander adults are twice as likely to die from stomach cancer as white adults. Patients with localized hepatocellular carcinoma, a liver cancer, who have no health insurance enjoy only half the survival rate of those with private insurance. The mortality differences may be due to upstream effects that we reviewed in the past few slides, including differences in screening, treatment, and clinical trial participation. So in our last few moments together, I'll share with you a few strategies that can be implemented to reduce disparities. Of course, there are entire conferences dedicated towards sharing these efforts, but I wanted to share just a few with you today. In 2016, to answer this question of what can be done, the Institutes for Healthcare Improvement published a white paper with the framework for healthcare organizations to achieve health equity. They recommended 5 aims directed towards the multiple levels in which disparities can arise. The first is to make health equity a strategic priority. That means that healthcare systems would demonstrate leadership commitment to improving equity at all levels of the organization, and they would secure sustainable funding through new payment models. The second was to develop structure and processes to support health equity work. They must establish a governance committee to oversee and manage equity work across the organization and dedicate resources in the budget to support equity work. Just like any other effort, it does require resources. The third is to deploy specific strategies to address the multiple determinants of health on which healthcare organizations can have an impact. It's not enough for healthcare organizations to say, well, the social determinants of health are before they access the hospital. No, there are certainly things that even healthcare organizations can do, including providing appropriate healthcare services, addressing socioeconomic status for their patients, making sure the physical environment is one in which everyone can take advantage of the space, as well as promoting healthy behaviors within the organization, as well as the community. The fourth is to decrease institutional racism within the organization. That can include examining the physical space. That can include examining the health insurance plans that are accepted by the organization. Are there certain groups that are being reduced, that have reduced access due to the insurance practices? They also recommend reducing implicit bias within the organizational policies, structures, and norms, and in patient care. And the last is to develop partnerships with community organizations. Leverage community assets to work together on community issues related to improving health and equity. My talk would not be complete without sharing 2 events that are happening in the Cleveland area. And this actually pertains to that last bullet point that I just mentioned. So the first is a collaboration between the Cleveland Clinic and the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. On Saturday, October 30th at the Langston Hughes Community Health Center, we'll be offering mammograms, pap smears, COVID vaccines, and flu shots. Please register at 216-444-2626 to let us know that you're coming. The second is the 6th annual Cancer Disparities Symposium on March 3rd and 4th. Dr. Lori Pierce, the immediate past president of the American Society for Clinical Oncology, will be the keynote speaker. There will be a number of exciting speakers and leaders in the space, as well as a book discussion on Biased by Jennifer Eberhardt. You do not want to miss this. Registration opens on Monday, October 18th. Thank you all so much for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Dr. Unger, thank you so much for sharing information about the work that you're doing, which is so important and fascinating. So as before, if you have any questions for Dr. Unger, please put your questions in the chat, and we will try to get to as many of them as we can. So Dr. Unger, the first question I have for you, you know, cancer patients and families have a lot to navigate in cancer care. And with your experience working with so many different communities, I'm wondering if you can share with us where patients can go to learn more about clinical trials.
And you said to learn more about clinical trials?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much for asking about this. I think it's crucially important, and it's definitely an effort that we've been working on at the Cleveland Clinic, improving clinical trial enrollment for patients. I think one of the best things that you can do is, that patients can do is, just like our prior speaker mentioned, make sure that you're seen at a large volume center that's comfortable managing all different types of cancers and that has all the different modalities, radiation oncology, palliative medicine, surgical oncology, in addition to medical oncology, so that they can receive comprehensive care. Those are going to be the best places to find out about clinical trial enrollment and opportunities. There are increasingly clinical trials that are done in community settings. We recognize that there's really an unmet need when we don't offer clinical trials at smaller community settings. And so increasingly there are trials there as well. And so your medical oncologist or your radiation oncologist, whomever is managing a patient's cancer care, is really the best person to reach out to. There is a level of trust that develops as patients go along their cancer care, and their oncologist will let them, give them truthful and honest opinions about which clinical trials are appropriate for them and what they expect the outcome to be of that trial. So definitely, I encourage patients to speak with their healthcare providers.
And as a follow-up to that, and thinking about disparities, what do you think we need to do to narrow the distance between access to clinical trials for rural and African American cancer?
That's a really great question. I think one of the things that is a barrier for these populations and participation, one, of course, is just kind of where the clinical trial is held. If we're not holding at the communities, at the community oncologist clinics, then we're eliminating large volumes of people who could potentially benefit from clinical trials, but also our clinical trial structure. In the past, clinical trials have been created with really strict inclusion criteria, and patients would have to be kind of the best to be able to participate. And we are finding that it's really not equitable, because if we really use the best to participate in a trial, but then we're going to apply the results of that trial to everyone with varying health, health status, it's not really the best way to know that the intervention works for everyone. And so broadening the inclusion criteria, making sure that we're being, if we put a specific reason for an exclusion, for example, maybe creatinine clearance, that there's a specific and safety related reason why we want to exclude patients with a certain, creatinine or kidney function. It really comes back down to making sure that we're being thoughtful in the way that we create our clinical trials. It's not a way that we've thought about it in the past, but I think that as we know better, that we're doing better. And so I expect that clinical trials will be increasingly diverse and more representative of the general population that will benefit from the clinical trials.
Great, thank you so much for walking us through that. Any questions for Dr. Unger? Just looking here in the chat to see if any have popped. Well, Dr. Unger, thank you again for being here with us tonight. And I'd also like to thank Amanda and Lisa for joining us and sharing their stories. We're very fortunate that all of you were willing to be here tonight and to talk to us. Really amazing stories that were shared. Oh, I think I saw a question come in here. Let me here. So Dr. Unger, I think this question is for you. How widespread is the concern for these disparities? I understand that doctors care about these disparities, but do everyday people know of them? Are they responding and trying to make differences? And any grassroots movements to correct them? Lots of questions there.
Yes, great questions. I think that, as we saw what happened with the pandemic, many people became much more aware of societal injustices. I don't think there's any other way that we can say it. And I think it was actually a good thing, because these injustices had been going on under the radar for years and years and years. And for us to become more aware of them as a community, as a country, as the whole world, to be honest, I think it really helps spawn a lot of conversation around inequities and disparities. There's still a lot of work to be done. This is really, awareness is really just the beginning. We have to do the heavy work of doing those kind of 5 aims that I talked about, and really putting resources behind this. That's, you have to do more than just talk about something or make a statement, but you have to put resources and committees and infrastructure and examine where things are, within your own environment, within your families, within your workplace. It does require work, but we're kind of dismantling a infrastructure that's been in place for hundreds of years. And so it's going to take some time, but it'll definitely take work and resources. So I think that there's hope as we continue working on this. The fact that the American Cancer Society hosted this event this evening, I think is really wonderful, and that there's continuing to be other opportunities to look into this.
Great, and we have another question that came in. So what agency or agencies fund clinical trials? The cost must cause many roadblocks for patients.
Yeah, so the clinical trials, there can be a number of different funding sources. Sometimes the drug companies themselves will host clinical trials. Sometimes it'll be a partnership between academic institutions and private industry. Sometimes it's funded by the government, depending on where it is, and there can be grants to support it. Sometimes it's kind of multifactorial. And so there are a number of different agencies that fund trials because trials are very expensive. However, the patients don't have a cost to participate in clinical trials. If anyone says that you need to pay to participate in a clinical trial, really look into that carefully and talk with your oncologist, because the clinical trial should not cost anything, because we're essentially trying to find out whether intervention works and whether, and how well it works. And so that cost should not be passed on to the patient. So you want to, if anyone tells you that you need to pay to participate in clinical trial, examine that very closely with your oncologist. And as our other speakers have mentioned, do not hesitate to get a second opinion.
Great answer.
Thank you. And then another question came in. ACS CAN volunteers have been learning more about disparities and health inequities. Where do you suggest the volunteers start in order to help make a difference?
Another great question. I think that one of the ways that I got started with this was really looking for books that to help me better understand this. The Bias book, and just to plug it again, it really is a great book to kind of start to learn a little bit more about this. You can also reach out to some of the larger institutions, as many of them are starting organizations to better understand health disparities for their patients, but also within their own organizations. And so I think that, when there are disparities in all areas, to be completely honest, but within healthcare, I think those are some of the good places to go, is starting with kind of researched books, and also going to conferences such as this talk and the conference that's going to be coming up in March, hosted by Case Western.
Thank you.
Great. I am just checking here to make sure I don't miss any questions. Okay, I don't think I see any. So again, just a big thank you to all three of you for being with us tonight, sharing personal stories, and Dr. Unger sharing, so much of the work that you've been doing. And finally, I want to thank everyone in the audience tonight. We are all in the fight against cancer together, and appreciate you joining us for this event. So thank you so much, and have a wonderful night.
Thank you.